Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is the next video in the what and the how series of UiPath. For the people who are looking to the channel for the first time, please consider subscribing to the channel to get the latest updates. In the what and the how series of UiPath, I am trying to answer the queries which I receive over the comments, over the email, over the Instagram, or over my direct chats. So this time I have received an email from Srinivas which says that he is having a issue in writing a login logic. He says that whenever we try to open a web application and we go to the login page, we give the credential and then we log in, right? So the credential might be coming from Orchestrator and then we log in. Now what happens sometime when you browse the URL again, sometime the page might be already opened. Now, in that scenario, how we can handle this and how we can actually notify it further that yes, it was already logged in and do the next set of steps. So this is the login issue which I am going to recreate, and I am going to tell the solution also for this problem statement. Prior to this video, we have covered a couple of videos already in the what and the how series. These are all the videos. I have put the link of the playlist in the description for your reference. And in case you also have a similar question or a kind of a query for me to get answered in the series, feel free to drop me a note on the email which is available in the description. So let's now jump to this problem statement of Srinivas. Okay, so the same example, now I am going to explain the problem statement with the help of the Acme. So this is the URL Acme test UiPath login which actually opens the test portal. Now the first screen when I log in this could be this screen where the bot is asking to provide the username and the password. So I simply go and provide the username and the password and hit login. If my credentials are correct, I am successfully logged in, right? But sometime what might happen if I again go and try to browse the same URL, because my session was already enabled in one of the previous windows, or let's say in the same session, I am not directly coming to this screen. So how do I handle both scenarios? That is what we are going to explain. So I hope you understand what exactly is the problem statement. So I'll quickly go and hit log out, and let me go back to the login page. And now to develop this, we'll directly jump to the UiPath Studio. Okay, so this is our solution where we have been working on the what and the how series. I go here and I create a new sequence. I'll call this sequence as login and hit create. Make sure that whenever you are writing automation, rename the workflows correctly so that you are able to understand what exactly this workflow does. So if you see on my right hand side, you can easily understand that yes, this is for data extraction, this is for Excel replace, but I don't know why these two sequences are created, flowchart and flowchart 1, right? So naming best practice. Okay. Now what is the first thing? The first thing which I want to do here is we want to open this browser, right? So to open the browser, we already have an activity in UiPath. I'll go to the activities and I'll search here open browser. Drag and drop the activity here, open browser. Now open browser is asking me, tell me the URL of the browser which you want to open. So I just go here and I pass the URL. In the real-time scenarios, all these URLs would be available from the config file or the assets. We do not hardcode anything in the workflow. Okay. So here it is. I have opened the browser. If I go to the properties now, it is asking me, you have specified the URL, but you never told me which browser to open, right? So because a computer might have multiple browser. So I am sticking to Edge. And when I say Edge, I want this thing, and you should have the UiPath plugin already installed to get the automation done. Okay. Once we have opened the browser, so it might land in this screen or the other one, right? So if I land in this screen, I should provide the username and the password, something like this, and login, right? So if you notice here, what is the difference between this screen? Okay, let me just do one thing. Let us take a snipping tool. Okay, I'll just take a screenshot of this one. Okay, so this is my login screen, and once I hit login, so we might land up on this screen and this screen. So these are the two screen. Let me put it side by side like this. Okay, so these are the two screen which can be available whenever I hit the URL. Now if you see both the screen and you try to compare them, this top menu is available in both the screen, but what is not available is the logout button. So one way could be that you find the logout button. The other way could be whenever we log in, we are always landing to the dashboard. So I can always look for if you find the logout button or if you find the dashboard button, that means you are already logged in. In case you are not finding the logout or the dashboard button, that means you are on the first page. So these are the only two situations, right? So if you see here, this was the first page. We don't have the dashboard or the logout button here, right? So that is the same logic which we are going to implement in the robot also. Now to find an element inside the browser, we have to look for an element, right? So we have to check whether the element exists or it does not exist. So I'll go here and I'll search simply for an activity which is called element exist. I am telling UiPath to find an element and I say element exist. Element exist is a simple property, or I would say a simple activity where we have to indicate the element and the output of the element exist is a boolean variable. A boolean means either true or false. If the element is found, I'll get true. If the element is not found, I'll get false, right? So element exist, indicate element inside the browser, and let me just point it to this guy, dashboard, home, or you can simply point it to the logout button. So for me, I feel that logout button is the correct one. So I can go here and simply click on this one. Whenever we create such selector, there are two things which happen. The first thing is the name of the activity. The second thing is selector. So always as a developer, whenever you are writing, make sure you just validate the selector whether it looks correct or not. Okay. So if you see here, it says the control name is the logout and this parent ID is something it is available here, right? So if I feel that yes, this parent ID might be changed, so you always has an option to remove the parent ID. Now if I have removed the parent ID, if I again click on validate, highlight, I'm still able to find the logout button, right? So I don't actually require this parent ID. If this parent ID is something very good to see, so why I am omitting it? Because if you see here, it says 1. What happens if changes it to 2? So you can make it at star question mark, right? But if I completely omit also, then also I'm able to highlight this element. We have explored this complete UI Explorer in a detailed video, both in English and Hindi language. In case you are new to this complete wizard of UI Explorer, feel free to explore both the videos. I'll put the links in the description. Okay, so once we have validated it, I'll simply click OK. That means that I am telling that my selectors look good. Now, one best practice again here, the element exists. This is for the logout button. So change this name so that the automation is readable. We have discussed this in the best practice series also, right? And this is the open browser for the Acme. That's it. Now, if it is available, now how do I know? I'll go to the properties. I'll create a boolean variable. The shortcut is Ctrl+K and I say is login. Now, in the variable naming best practices, what we have seen in the previous videos, that you should always rename the variable in a positive manner, right? Is login. So that means that yes, if it is already login, true and false. Do not rename the variables like is not login. Okay, so always name it in a positive manner. Now, what is the next thing? The next thing is we have to simply check, right? So just validate it. So in the control, I'll take an activity called the if activity. And what do I need to check? I need to check is login. Okay, so if this variable is true, do this. If this variable is false, do that. Okay, so to show the else, you have to simply click on this one which says show the else. So if and else. So You can always write it like this also, or if you simply put the is login also, that also works, right? But to have a readability, I'm just writing it as is login is equal to true, which means that if the login is successful, what do you want to do? So the first thing which I want to do is I simply want to have a log message. Okay, I want to have a log message, and in the log message I want to have an info level log, and I want to print a message simply saying that login was already done. And what happens if the login is false, this variable is false, that means that login was not done, and then we are at the home page, right? So that means that now we are enter the credentials. Okay, so these are the two scenarios which could happen. Now the next set of actions would be, what do you want to do next? Now if login was not done, we need to enter the credentials. Where do I get the credential from? This is the most common interview question. Where do you store the credential? So where exactly do we store the credential? In UiPath, the credentials can be stored in the assets, right? So for my use case, I have already created the assets in the Orchestrator. I hope you guys understand what exactly are assets, how do you create it. In case you don't understand it, I have these two dedicated videos explaining the assets in details. Have a look into this video and you would understand what are assets, how do we use it. So for this demonstration, if I simply go to the data manager here, and you would see these are all the assets which I have created, right? Now why I am getting these assets? So just to give you an extra information here, these assets I am getting because I am connected to the admin folder. So whatever assets I have created in the admin folder would be available here. So I can see all the assets whichever I have created. Now for me, I have stored the credentials of Acme in this asset whose name is Acme credential. One way is you can always simply drag and drop this asset here and it will ask you that which activity you want to select, or the other way is you can always use the activity panel, right? So I know that my asset has credentials, it has user ID and the password. That is why I cannot use the get asset activity, and I am going to use the get credential activity inside the Orchestrator assets. I am telling UiPath that I am going to give you an asset name. You need to return me the username and the password. Now, if you simply go here, you can see that the asset name which I created is Acme credentials. So I go here in the double quotes, I write Acme credentials. Make sure that you rename it properly. There should be no extra spaces, otherwise it won't work. Okay. Now once I get the credential, it is asking me where do you want to store the username and the password. So I go here, I create a variable. It's very easy. Hit Ctrl+K and create a variable for username. In the password, create a variable for password. Hit Ctrl+K and say password. That's it. Now this get credential will only happen if the login is not successful. If the login is successful, it will simply that yes, it is already done. Okay, so this would happen only if the login is not successful. So now if it get the credential, login is not successful, that means I am on the previous screen. Okay, so let me hit log out, and yeah, so we are at this screen. Now I have got the credential. Now I simply have to use the type activity to print the username and the password here and click on the login button, right? So I go here and I type a sequence. This sequence I'll call it as the login sequence, right? So I go here and I say this is my login sequence. I just simply want to have a neater workflow, that is it. You can always drag and drop it activity here. You can write it in a new sequence also, right? Now to type something on the browser, I'm going to use an activity called type into. It is asking me indicate the element inside the browser. So I'll go here and I say you need to type here. Again the same thing, always validate the selector. So it's an input and the type is email. This perfectly looks fine to me, no changes here. So now the one change which I would like to do here is in the name. So this is my type username. Now where exactly is my username? The username is available in a variable which we have got from the credential activity, and it is in the variable called username. So I go here and I simply type username. The next thing is I have to pass the password. Now password, if you notice here, whenever we created the variable, password is not a string, it is a secure string. UiPath stores the password in a secure string variable. That means I cannot simply use a type activity, normal type into activity, to provide the password. Whenever you are dealing with passwords, to store the password, or I would say to type the password, you have a new activity which is called type secure text. It is used to type the secure text. Type into simply types the things like it right here, and whatever I type, I want to be it as a password, so I am using the type secure text. I hope you understand what exactly is this activity. Drag and drop it here. The other properties are absolutely simple. Indicate element inside the browser. So I'll just go to the browser, which is here, and in the properties, let's configure this. So this one is for type of the password, so I change, sorry, my bad, I'll just go back again to the properties of this guy. Yeah, so this is the type for password. Okay, and in the secure text input, if you see the secure text, now where is the secure text? It is inside this variable of password. That's it. We have provided the username, we have provided the password. The next thing is we have to click on the login button. So I just use an activity called UI element, mouse and click, drag it just after the password, indicate on the browser, click on the login button. Right now I just forgot to validate the selector for password. Yeah, it says type is equal to password, looks good. And this one is for the click button. I do not want to name as click button, so this is for the login. And now let's quickly validate the selector also inside the target, and here is your selector. Yeah, submit button looks good. Okay, so this almost complete my automation. So once I am available in this, login was already done, login was done, enter the credential, and once everything is successful, I need to have a log message which says login is successful. Okay, you can put some delays, that's absolutely depend on your implementation. Once you are done till this step, after this step, now there would be two possibilities. Either you are on this screen or you are on the other screen. If you are on the other screen, you can directly start the automation. If you are on this screen, bot will log in and bot will again take you to the same screen, right? So now if I simply go and log in here, so bot will again take me to the same dashboard screen. Now after this, I can simply write all the next set of automation whichever I wanted to do. Let's say for me the simple automation which I want to do is let's say we just want to extract this text. Okay, so after this I simply will use an activity which is called get text. But now one thing notice here, whenever I log in, you would notice my browser window has changed. My login window was different and this is a new window. Now one thing which I would suggest you guys, whenever you are dealing with a new set of windows and you want to do extraction and everything, use something which is called attach browser. I am instructing UiPath that the next set of activities I want you to do in the new instance, or I would say in a new kind of a page, right? It's a new page. So I simply say attach the browser, indicate on screen and point it to the browser window again, right? Don't put the attached browser inside the open window, right? Open window, job is done. So now again, let me just quickly change this if to check. Okay, now this is already done. So I am done with this one and I do not want to do anything here. Now once it is successfully login, I'll log into this one, attach window of Acme, and then I simply wanted to get the text, right? So I'll use an activity called get text. Okay, and point it here, indicate element inside the browser, and I simply want to get, let's say, this complete text, whosoever is want to log in, right? So it can be any other operation for you guys. It can be the data extraction, the anything, what are the next thing you want to do inside the automation. For me, for the demo purpose, we are just using this one. Get the text. Where do you want to store the value? I say that I want to store the value in str underscore output. And what do you want to do with this value? Let's simply print it. So to print, I will use a log message activity again. Drag and drop it here like this. In here, I would say that this is an info level, and I say that str output. That's it. So my automation is completed. Now if I run the automation in both the scenarios, one with successful login and one with not successful login, if in my output, if I am able to get the message, that means that we are good to go. Okay, so let's see what is the situation now. So let me just first do the first scenario where it is, where it is not logged in, right? So I'll go here, copy this for my thing, and I'll just close this browser. So now browser is not available. I'll go here and I simply say run the file. So the automation has started. It has opened the browser. Now it will fetch the user ID and the password from the orchestrator assets. Okay, once the fetch is successful, it will go and type the password in here. Okay, so it has typed the user ID and the password that is from the assets, and then clicked on the login. Now the login is successful, and to validate, I can simply go to the output, and you could see that welcome Mukesh, I was able to get into this screen, right? So this was the first scenario when the login was not successful. So you can see in the logs, login was not done, enter the credential, login was successful, and then a welcome. But now let's see the other scenario where the portal is already logged in, right? So the portal is already logged in as of now. If I simply close this browser, and if I simply, let's try to do it manually, if I'm getting or not, let me quickly validate that as well. If I again quickly reopen this URL, and I hope it should already be logged in. Yeah, it's already logged in, right? So let us try to do the same thing with the automation. Now this time the same automation, but it is already logged in. So let's see how the robot behaves. The same thing would happen. It will start the browser, open the browser, hit the URL, and after the hitting the URL, it will first validate the button, and the automation stopped. Let me check the output now. You would see here login was already done, and now it is asking me, just given me the message that I did not go into this flow, right? So that was the implementation which we wanted to do here. Now what other thing you can do depending on your requirement? Again, you can always check if the logout button is already available here. I did not do the login. You can always instruct the robot to log out of the portal if you see the logout button. So the automation would look like this. If this page is already logged in, click on the logout button. It will again take back you to the login screen and then re-login. That would be the scenario when you want to enforce the re-login and you want to have a fresh session, right? So just here, what you could do is, if login is already done, take a click activity, click on the logout button. It will take you to the initial page, and then get the credential, and then copy paste this login sequence here. That also can be your implementation, right? So depending on your requirement, you can actually tweak the automation. So I hope you understand how actually you can complete this one. Now, whenever you are writing a login sequence, there could be one more scenario, which is what happens if the password which you have provided is not correct, and I click on login. This time you need to inform the client or the customer, and usually this is a business exception. So this also need to be taken care of. Okay, so if the asset password whichever you have given is not correct, incorrect, expired, what will happen to the automation? So here it will simply go click on the login and it will simply say that my login was successful. That is not correct, right? So this can be validated using an if activity again, right? So before using the if activity, I simply use an activity which is called element exist. Once you click on the login button, right, element inside the browser, and I am checking if you get this thing, the credential does not match after you click on the login button, right, highlight, right. So if you see here, this selector does not look pretty good to me because this does not have any information about the actual thing, right? So I can open this in UI Explorer and let me add some of the details of wrong credential, right? Because I don't want my automation to fail. So I simply click on this guy which says open in UI Explorer, and yes, this one, the A name has the thing which I want to do add, right? So I click on save, yes, and okay. Now this is for in the properties, I would say that this is the wrong password. So to store this, I hit Ctrl plus K and I'll say that is the login error. So is there any login error or not, right? So now if I just go to the activities to validate, I'll again use an if activity, drag and drop it here, and I say that if you have got a login error, which means that if you have got this error, right, if login error is successful, that means it is not having the valid records. So I'll copy this, paste it here again, and this time I would change the level to error and I say that login not successful. Okay, and whatever you want to give the next set of instruction, you can always give, right? But what I really wanted to do here is I wanted to raise a business exception. Now to raise a business exception, you can simply use an activity called throw, and in here you simply write this statement, new business rule exception, and I would say that incorrect credentials. So this can be anything, right? Whatever you wanted to write, you want to give more information, you can always give, but incorrect credential. So this is how you raise business exception. In case you don't understand what is business exception, system exception, how do you raise it, how do you handle the try catch, there is this dedicated playlist explaining the exception handling both in English and Hindi language. Please have a look into the exception handling playlist because that is very important whenever you are working as a developer, right? So now throw business exception, this will simply go and throw the business exception in case the credential does not match. Okay, so yes, this is done, not successful, and if it is the login error is not there, that means my login is successful. And once everything is done, it will again go and do the next set of steps. Okay, now to quickly validate this, I'll go back to the orchestrator assets and change something in the password. An easy way of doing it, go to the data manager, right click on the asset and say view the asset. And what would happen? It will automatically take you to the cloud.uipath.com to your orchestrator. It will ask you to the login, right? So let me just click continue with Google. And once you are redirected, it will directly take you to the orchestrator and to the asset for the addition, right? So we simply want to update the Acme credential asset, right? So this was the asset. I'll go here, I'll edit it, and let me just in the password here, I'll just pass 1234, right? So I have just passed 1234, which is the wrong password. I'll update. Asset has been updated. Now if I simply go and try to run this automation, the page is log out, I should get a business exception now, right? So this is also one of the scenario which we need to handle whenever you are working with login. Okay, so I'll go here and I simply say run the file. Okay, so we have handled a new scenario where if it is logged out and the password is incorrect, Okay, it has opened the browser. Now the same thing will happen. It will go to the orchestrator and fetch the credential and try to log in this. But what I have done, I have changed the password. Okay, so let's see how it behaves. Okay, it has got the user ID, wrong password. It clicked on the login and we have got that exception. And if you see here, I have got a runtime business exception which says that it is incorrect credential, right? Incorrect credential is handled, so that's why it did not log in. And if you see the error, login was not done. It tried to enter, the login was not successful. It has thrown a business exception. So that means this sequence is also working for us. Now you might be thinking, what should I do with this pop-up error, right? That completely depends on our implementation. A good way would be that whenever that exception comes, catch the exception and send an email to the business saying that the credential is not correct, it is incorrect, or you can do the next set of implementation, right? So that is where exceptional handlings come in picture. Okay, so I'm again giving you the 2 playlist links in the description for the exceptional handling. Have a look into it and then you would be able to write this complete login sequence for yourself. Okay, so I hope you understand how did this complete login thing worked for us. So I would request you that you go back and you create this automation by yourself. That will give you a lot of insights about this login sequence. Okay, so I would like to wrap this video here. Thank you for watching. If you have any more question on this context or any more new queries or question, feel free to drop me a comment or you can email me. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please do subscribe to the channel and happy automation.